Did you know that there could be something about your posture that is slowing your fingers down? Having good posture doesn't necessarily mean having to stand or sit like military straight. It's just that certain postural habits are really going to have an impact on how fast your fingers can move. Here are some of the common problems that either I've been guilty of or I've witnessed students doing over the years that really aren't helpful when it comes to keeping your fingers moving really freely. So number one is an imbalance in between the hands and the face. So there's basically 3 points of contact that keep your flute in balance. One is how we hold it against our face. One is your left hand and how it holds the flute up, and the other is your right hand thumb and how it holds the flute up. If there's a very good balance between those three, it allows your fingers to move really freely. However, if there's an imbalance and one of the points of contact isn't quite right, what usually happens is that we overcompensate with the other hand. So for example, if the left hand isn't completely underneath the flute to hold it up, so sometimes we'll see it kind of in front of the flute like that, or just sort of resting on a part that isn't the strong part of the knuckle here. So if it's too far out, what happens is it's not really holding the flute up. So then we have to overcompensate with the right hand, and then you end up with a thumb that's kind of all over the map. So sometimes they're out here or here in a way that compensates to hold the flute up for you. And the other thing that can happen is that you end up kind of plastering it against your face so much that it creates a bunch of tension in your hands because you're just trying to hold the flute up. It's not a comfortable way to hold the flute. Vice versa, if this thumb is kind of in a strange place, I've seen some like way over here or often kind of out here, then it really slows your fingers down and we're having to kind of compensate with the other hand to really hold the flute up because there's not a lot of stability coming from that right hand. So making sure that the thumb is underneath your pointer finger somewhere, everybody's hands are a little different. There's no perfect here, but somewhere underneath, so not too far out, not too far underneath. Just right in the middle there, and then making sure that it's on the knuckle part, okay, of your left hand, keeping that balance really well, and then you can lightly have it against your face without a lot of pressure, which allows a lot of flexibility for your embouchure, and then you're not overcompensating and creating all sorts of tension in your fingers that's going to slow them down. So if I try and demonstrate with this hand in the wrong place, it's just awkward for me anyways, but I'm feeling a lot of tension in this hand and it's really hard to get that hand moving. So moving out from the hands, another common postural problem is especially drooping. Sometimes we have people like this, but drooping arms. And this is interesting because this is something I've found myself guilty of lately. When I start to get tired after hours and hours of orchestra rehearsal, sometimes I notice I'm starting to droop on the right hand side, which makes my right hand kind of end up being more like this so that it's holding the flute up. It's more underneath the flute. And I start to feel some pain in here. And that's what cues me in. Oh my gosh, I'm drooping. Oh, I just need to get my flute back up. And that way my right hand is free to actually move. So if you're experiencing any kind of tendon pain or pain in that right hand, it could be, nothing's a simple fix, but it could be very helpful for you to make sure that your flute is more straight across and that you're holding it with a balance in both hands, like I said. And so that your right hand, I always kind of liken it to like grabbing a hamburger. If you were going to grab a hamburger and eat it, what shape would your hand be? So that's how I kind of think about grabbing onto the flute so that it's sort of a neutral position. So when I'm drooped, I can still move fast, but I'm starting to get that tension creep in, and it will eventually become injury if I'm not careful. So I could do that all day. It feels very free. So moving on to legs, if you have your knees really, really locked, or your hips are pushed forward, or maybe there's kind of an arch in your back. I'm guilty of that one. If you have any of those kind of stiffnesses in your posture, it's going to creep into your fingers. So you wouldn't think that how you're standing is going to affect your fingers, but all of that tension, so locking your knees or pushing your hips, any of that creates some tension, which will creep up right into your arms. So when I'm really, really stiff, I can just feel all the tension, it's in my whole body and it goes right into my arms and into my hands. If I just relax a little bit, I have a story about this one because back when I was in university, I would definitely lock up my knees all the time. And I was in a master class. I can't even remember the piece that I was playing, but there was some kind of technical run that like ascended up into the high register, into the third register of the flute. And I wasn't able to play it. So I performed the piece, kind of flubbed it. And then when we got to that place and isolated in with the teacher and said, try that passage again, same thing, flubbed it, couldn't play it, totally messed up my fingers. He said, okay, now I want you to play it and literally bend your knees as you're playing it. So as you're playing the run, actually bend down. And it went from like, to, I played it perfectly when all I had to do was bend my knees. And what I took from that is that I was putting all this tension into my fingers, literally from just how I was holding my body. It had nothing to do with my fingers itself, but it was creeping into my fingers because there was so much tension in how I was holding myself. So just going down was really, really helpful. Now, if you want to know more about how to actually practice some of these difficult passages, join us in our free online class, Master High Register Technique in 4 Simple Steps. It's happening on November 22nd, this Saturday at 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. All you have to do is join our free school community, Fundamentally Flute. I'll leave our community link in the description. The next problem is actually raising up on your tippy toes. You can't see my toes, but I'm actually like lifting up on my feet. And I've witnessed other people doing this, especially where they're getting really excited or expressive or emotive. It's this kind of habit that comes in that they're like ascending with the music. So something like, so did you hear how sharp I went there? So as you go up, same thing. It takes so much energy to actually physically raise up like that it's taking the energy away from holding the flute. Again, we'll go right back to the basics of holding it in a really, really neutral and balanced way. So when we're up and we're doing all sorts of things like this, it's changing the balance between the hands. It's creating all that tension in your body. It's going to show up in your fingers, and that's when you're going to get that little bit of tension. And this might not mean that you're going to completely screw up the run or it's going to be completely wrong or you just can't play fast at all. Okay, let me be clear about this. It's holding you back from that absolute freedom of playing as fast and cleanly as you want. So the more, neutral and relaxed and grounded we are, the faster your fingers are going to be able to move, and it's going to give you that freedom to have that really blazingly fast technique. Okay, so the last one I have for this video is leaning into the stand, and this can apply when you're either sitting or standing. So sometimes, I've been for sure guilty of this one as well. When something's getting really technical, I'll kind of lean in as if my eyes can see it better if I'm just closer to the stand or something. And so I'm exaggerating there, but that again, this isn't a balanced posture. And so what happens to your hands when you're doing that? Are they actually balanced between the hands? What are you doing with the flute against your face? Okay, clearly I can still play the excerpt when I'm doing that, but it's not going to be as free and fast flowing and as relaxed, and it's not going to have the character that I want because I'm so stressed out and I'm leaning into the stand. And sometimes I find myself doing this in orchestra if we're playing, a 3-hour opera that I haven't practiced maybe enough, and I'm looking at a difficult part and I'm trying to sight read it. I'm right in there, and all I'm doing is just creating a bunch of tension. If I just laid back, sat neutrally, it would probably go a lot better. Now, the final point I want to make is that not only do some of these postural changes affect your fingers, they can also affect your sound. So just how shifting, you're crooked or you're leaning forward or you're up on your toes, any of that stuff, it shifts the balance between your hands. It can also shift the core of your body, the position of the core of your body. And all of this is so important to creating your sound how you want to create it. You're controlling the speed of the air through your air support system. And so if you're losing your air support because your knees are completely locked, or you're up on your tippy toes, or your arm is drooping like this and you're not actually breathing fully because you're kind of collapsed on one side, all of that stuff is going to infiltrate your sound. And then somehow it just messes with our minds. And so if I'm playing a really technical passage, I don't have great posture, already, so my fingers are getting a bit stressed, and then I'm starting to crack notes because I'm not supporting the sound properly, then in my mind, my fingers are screwing up even more, and it just creates even more tension in my fingers, even though it's actually a sound problem. So all of it can be corrected by just making sure you're keeping a very balanced posture. And again, it's not military straight, it's not perfect posture, it's not correct posture, okay? Everybody's bodies are different. Everyone's going to approach this a little bit differently, and there's certainly different schools of thought out there about exactly how to balance the flute between your two hands and your face. You got to do what works for you. The key is balance. So finding balance in your posture is going to allow your fingers to move as freely as they're able to move. And then really the onus is just on you to practice.